the part 2 of the 3 parts as usual for the Thank God series. We will be on the indirect wealth. And so let's just do a quick recap into indirect wealth before we move on to the sharing for today. So of all the 10 gods, indirect wealth is the one of the very popular ones because this is the god of money and the god of sex. And therefore, money and sex, these are the two things that governs the day master as we look into what is indirect wealth. So as we see, the indirect wealth represents the element to which the day master seek to control. Therefore, the desire to control. The desire to control. The desire to dominate. And in order to dominate, in order to be a dominant person, a dominant company, to dominate, of course, one must have a lot of resources. And therefore, the desire to have wealth is the desire to have a lot of resources, to which, of course, one seek to wake up every day motivated to dominate and to gain resources. Therefore, indirect wealth is a source of motivation. So the more indirect wealth that you have, the more motivated you are, the more hardworking you. Now, what is the opposite of hardworking? What is the opposite of hardworking? The opposite of hardworking may tend to be more relaxed, more chill, and sometimes the idea of lazy. Lazy. And so as we look into each of the 10 gods, we will begin to map out and feel that each of these 10 gods have their own friends and they have their own enemies and frenemies. So therefore, there will be elements that they like and elements that they don't. And so as we discussed in the last god, if you have hurting officer, what is the 110 gods that you don't like to see? If you have hurting officers, what do you not like to see? So if you're a hurting officer, you do not like to see direct officer. You don't like to see direct officer. And therefore, if you have wealth, what do you not like to see? You don't like to see resource. Because here, resource, there is a clash or control element. Therefore, wealth do not like to see resource, funny as it may be, but let's look into what it means. But of course, it will welcome output. So if you have wealth, you should have output. And then there will be a flow and you'll be among one of the richest. Therefore, the flow is you want to have a flow, a flow. And so to have a flow, that will be fantastic. So as we look into wealth, usually as we explore the wealth star, where would it be best to have wealth? If you're the day master here, where would you dream? If you're the day master here, where would you dream your wealth to be? Where would be a good place to have? And so usually, month and hour, that's right. Therefore, it's either here or it is either here, especially on the steps. And so there is one old poem or one saying that says, if you're embraced by wealth, then you'll be one of the richest in the world, something like that. Okay, so therefore this is like the one that is good. Preferably rooted. Preferably if you are rooted. Therefore, that would be even better. Okay, so anyway, as we know, we're already running into our series of the 10 gods. You know that if indirect wealth appears in the fasa, appears on the moon, a career month, appear has a structure, or appear anywhere. So in the first part here, as usual, we'll be looking at the day master, whether indirect wealth exists, and when it exists, where does it exist? Where does it exist? So again, we go through the checklist, whether it is hidden, whether it is missing, if it is missing, or if it is hidden, whether is it hidden in a grove or hidden in graveyard and hidden. And of course, the worst place to be hidden, if it is a graveyard star. If it is a graveyard star and if it is in the tomb. So therefore, this would be the worst place to be in, a graveyard hidden. And so if it is a 7K serial killer, and if it is an indirect wealth, then it may be a serial rapist or a womanizer, where it ends very bad. Therefore, to have indirect wealth in a graveyard or to have anything in the graveyard, there is the reading that we find what would be it. If it is health related, what kind of problems? If it is wealth related, or if it's relationship related, what is the problem? But again, indirect wealth also means the father. Also means the father. So may denote that in the person may have to experience the father, a sad event when it comes to it as well. All right, so now as we move along, so number one, we check for indirect wealth and see whether the person has indirect wealth. And when a person has indirect wealth, what does it mean? It would mean the person's orientation is about money. And of course, money means to use money to solve problems, to use money to get what the person wants. And so to them, money is easy come, easy go. Therefore, indirect wealth is not too sensitive about money, not too careful. So because to them, money is easily made. If it is easily made, don't sweat too much. So therefore, they are impulsive. They may think big, broad picture as it is. But again, we do find that indirect wealth, if it's easy come, is easy go, also means that they are generous. Therefore, they are also bleeding heart. You can get them to play the hero, and they were very likely to donate money to you. And therefore, if they do see that they are freeloaders, they don't mind, because to them, easy come, easy go. Right? If there's any problem that money can solve, those are not real problems. Therefore, that would be the attitude and the approach of indirect wealth. And so now let's move on to if it is indirect wealth. So once we find that a person is an indirect wealth, the next question is, what type of output is that? What type of output the person have? So in this context here, we do find that once you have indirect wealth, what it means by the type of output. So let's come to the point, is that there is a difference now between whether there is EG or whether there is hurting officer. So now here comes the part. So first of all, let's see that the person has indirect wealth. So where is that indirect wealth? So the first thing is whether the person has indirect wealth. Okay, fine. Let's say we have a day master here, and we do have indirect wealth here. Oh, fantastic. There's an indirect wealth there. Excellent. Excellent. So therefore, this guy is an entrepreneur. This guy is gonna have propensity to make money. This guy is gonna have that broad part. Because why? Because indirect wealth is embraced by the mind. And if it's rooted somewhere, then if it's rooted in the year, oh, even better, even better. Therefore, until the end, therefore, the wealth will persist and continue until the end. This is very good. All right. And now, the next part is there EG or is there hurting officer? Which one? If missing, what a sad opportunity. That means so rare to find indirect wealth on the moon, on the month, and then but then no missing. The missing. Therefore, still can make money, but then not sustainable. Not like can sustain in an investment. So to be an investor trader, not so long. So this is not so. But anyway, but if there is EG or hurting officer, then the question is quality. Quality. Which one is better? Which one is better? Which one is stronger? So between these two, which one is stronger? Which one exists and dominate? So now that's the question we want to ask. All right, so therefore, if it is EG, it's stable. If it is EG, it signifies stability. If it is hurting officer, it signifies liveliness. So because why? Because EG generates direct wealth. EG leans towards the behind the scene. They're more educated, more refined. And so therefore, hurting officer generates indirect wealth, represents that the attribute is stronger. Therefore, EG is more spiritual. Hurting officer is more practical. And so in this context here, we find that the wealth generated by EG tends to be more idealistic. Hurting officer tends to be more pragmatic, right? More straightforward, stronger, and more energetic, more inventive. And so here we can then see that this would then indicate the type or the nature of work. And so this will be the part where the question is it EG producing direct wealth? That would be good. So if we find EG here, that will be also good, because EG produces the indirect wealth. So EG produces the indirect wealth. Okay, so anyway, if it is EG, so what does it mean? It means EG is more introvert. EG is more introvert. It is more spiritual, so to speak, more refined, more gentle, more stable. And so what does it mean? It means that this person tends to make money using creativity that is more behind the scene, in writing. So therefore, this person is an author. This person is a producer of content, of materials. Uh, in that sense, can be very academic. E.g., people are very academic. They can be they can be good in publication, in so-called introducing solutions, problem solving. They are more strategic. They are more strategic. So they are strategic thinking. Right. So therefore, if you see EG, and of course, if the EG is rooted, then strong EG producing indirect wealth, which is also rooted. Therefore, that will be very good. But of course, if it is not EG, then it may be hurting officer. So if it's hurting officer, then here we see the hurting officer would be extrovert, of course. They will be then extrovert. And hurting officer that is protruded to the stem, would that mean that it is visible? So this person is a performer, an orator, a charismatic politician who can then try to be more pragmatic. Therefore, this is more pragmatic. A more pragmatic approach. Therefore, a more tactical. Therefore, it's more tactical. So strategic and tactical. Tactical means on the ground. Tactical means, I mean, in a way, you can say that EG is good to fight wars, but hurting officer is good to map out battle strategy. That means on the ground and to be able to guide and lead. Therefore, that's hurting officer. Therefore, hurting officer is not so stable. In a way, it's more erratic. Therefore, it's more energetic. Therefore, one has to be one drives it in the form of being more energetic. Okay, so here we find that if the person has both EG and hurting officer, all well, it's fine. If it's EG and hurting officer, that's fine. But then, of course, we may want to know which is closer. So in a way, right now on the chart, which one is closer to the indirect wealth? Here we'll find that hurting officer is closer. Even though EG is there, but hurting officer is closer. And so you can see whether which one is closer, which one is stronger, and therefore that one will be the more dominant one that leads and drives. All right, so now here we look into the indirect wealth, see whether one exists, and then see whether once you see indirect wealth, see output. See output. If it is missing, then it doesn't sustain too long. Then the person's wealth is more based on luck. More on luck. That means sometimes luck means if it comes, it comes. It doesn't know, and so on. But of course, if you have hurting officer, then you have the product. It sticks longer. Okay, so now as we move along to the next part, we now come into the area to which we now explore the special readings. Then we look into the sitting order. So here we consider that when we look into indirect wealth, now we come into the opposite element that it clashes, which of course is resource. Therefore, when you see resource, there is a clash formation, and this clash formation would then result in what we may call mutual destruction. Now, in a way, you can say that mutual destruction here may mean that the person works very hard. I think there is one saying that says that we work very hard for our money, only to later find that we use the money to cure our health. Therefore, this would be somewhat considered to be a silly philosophy or a stupid idea. The stupid idea is to sacrifice your health to go after money. And then the money that you make will then be used to remedy or to repair your health. So at the end of the day, it sounds like that's not really like a breed. What's the point? What's the point of making money at the expense of your health? Therefore, here this would be what called mutual destruction. And so when we see people with wealth and health, it might in the old reading it says here greedy, but we will take greedy to mean that the person can be hardworking, the person is willing to sacrifice health for the sake of pursuing money. Therefore, that would be the case of the case of wealth and health mutual destruction. Right? Especially when we see if there are punishments, if there are betrayal, and therefore that would be also somewhat the reading that goes along. Okay, so if the person is strong in resource and the person is strong in health, then we might find mutual destruction. So if it's a mutual destruction, then once again, we need to again see proximity. Once again, we'll see where is that person. So we'll find as it is. So what will be the best combination at best? The best combination is that if you're a direct day master here, it would be nice if you have indirect resource here and you have your indirect wealth. But anyway, indirect wealth and resource would then clash each other. Or at least has a flow along. It might not be the best. It might not be the worst. It might not be the worst because the clash is separated by the day master. And this shows that during your career, you work, and during your older age, you have resource. So this is not so bad. Not so bad. Maybe this might be a little bit bad. This may be a bit bad where you have your resource here, and then you may have your wealth. Therefore, there is a clash, but it might then mean that, one of those saying that says, easy now, hardworking later, the life of a grasshopper. So you rather be the life of an hardworking ant, the hardworking ant, and then later you retire with a better resource. But of course, the clash would then be if it is near. Therefore, now you see that proximity, with the proximity, therefore now there's a resource clashing with the indirect, especially indirect resource clashing with indirect wealth. Therefore, that would be mutual destruction. Okay, so anyway, for today's topic on indirect wealth, your allies, your welcoming elements are the output, and your unfavorable elements would then be resource. And what would then be the advice? The advice is, of course, the sacrifice and the trade-off between taking care of your health or making money. So therefore, we need to see where it is to provide the adequate advice. All right, move along. Now we come into the next part where, of course, and if you want wealth, at least you want yourself to be strong, your wealth to be weak, and enrich through assistance. Now, this is fantastic. And so when you say enrich through assistance, what assistance are you talking about? Your output. So if your self is strong, wealth is weak, with assistance, which is your output star, then very nice. Then this would be a very ideal, very conducive scenario. Then you can control your wealth far more effectively. All right. Okay, so now let's take a look into the general attributes. So that's where we refer to what happens when indirect wealth meeting. So when we have indirect wealth, now let's talk about you meeting. Now, what does meeting means? Meeting means now you shall refer to your visiting pillar. So the visiting pillar, of course, will be what? Your luck pillar. So it visits you every 10 years. Then your annual pillar that visits you on a year. Then, of course, it goes down to your monthly pillar and your daily pillar that will have lesser impact. So the luck pillar and the pillar that visits. Now, the pillar that visits, of course, here, what happens when it visits your resource? So actually meeting resource creates a clash to your indirect wealth. Huh? Therefore, there's a counter. Huh? There's a counter. But such counter may, of course, when your indirect wealth is counted, it creates greater tendency for you to be outgoing. Huh? So greater than that. Therefore, this may be somewhat to see whether it clashes out or clashes in. Huh? Therefore, that would be the question. And the way indirect wealth also then clash with your friends. Therefore, here we do see that because here we see that when resource comes in, the wealth counters the resource. So therefore, this is clashing out. This is clashing out. But when you see a friend star, that will be clashing in. Well, let me just ask you a question. If you have a misfortune of being involved in a car accident, which is minor car accident, would you rather that you knock someone or you rather somebody knock you? Sounds like a terrible options for such a thought bubble. But in a way, you can find that you can see clashing out or clashing in. So something along the line, as it is. Okay, so anyway, both of you may also create that both friend star and wealth stars are open-minded. Therefore, they should also be wary of wealth being taken away, as it is. Okay, then indirect wealth producing seven killing. And of course, this would mean that the person tends to be flirtatious, tends to be more impulsive. And combined together, if indirect wealth is highly inauspicious. When indirect wealth becomes unfavorable, or indirect wealth becomes what we know as the harm god, the opposite of useful god. Therefore, if indirect wealth is a harm god, one that becomes the negative element, the negative god in the chart, then this may denote that the indirect wealth may use money in a way to solicit sex, in a way. It's more to say that, oh, you want me to help you? You want the promotion? Tell you what, if you want a promotion, you have to meet me at a hotel room tomorrow night. We can discuss further on your career advances. Therefore, that would be the indirect wealth producing seven killing, or indirect wealth being strong and in a negative manner. Because indirect wealth uses money. Uses money to solve problems, uses money to dominate. A very strong dominate that comes into mind. Okay, now indirect wealth will weaken the hurting officer. So it weakens the hurting officer, then of course, both of them are also very direct, very frank. Therefore, there's a tendency that the weakening part becomes offensive because hurting officer hurts the officer and indirect wealth produces the officer. Therefore, this may be a scenario where the person becomes too clothes. It becomes too. Okay, so now let's move on to the sitting on. So now, as you know, one by one, we'll explore what are the sitting on. We'll look into the materials given in the text by woven sheet, and here we'll see one by one whether that would be good or otherwise. Okay, now indirect wealth sitting on direct officer. Let's just ask one by one. Let's just go through the motion. Indirect wealth sitting on direct officer. Now, if that's the case, then can I ask number one, if this is a run day master, if this is a run water day master, what would be the indirect wealth of a run day water? The indirect wealth is where
Fire.
water, fire, fantastic, pink fire. And what would be the direct officer? What would be the direct
The earth.
G Earth? Okay. But that doesn't sound like you can have the, unless because this is yang and this is uh yin. This is yang and this is yin. So the only way this can work doesn't really sit well. Right? I hope you can really see how this is formation is not a very common one, isn't it? How can you have yang sitting on yin, which of course, this may only very likely be if the element switches. Therefore, this can only be water or fire. Because if it's fire, water, if this is water, then fire. So you can see that this means that there are only very few formation like that. And so for what kind of formation where we can have yang but actually yin by nature? That would be something like the pig, isn't it? No? The pig is yin, but then this is yang. So therefore, this is run water. So therefore, what would be the direct officer run water? Run water, if it's a direct officer, then what would be the day master? The day master would be king, isn't it? Right or not? Do you understand what I mean? That would be the thing, and therefore this would be what? Yi hai. Okay or not? Therefore, this is where we have the yi wood pig, where the thing, the thing, of course, sorry, not the thing, I beg your pardon. Where does the fire? The fire is a metal. Therefore, this is a sin day master. Okay? Therefore, the thing, this will be indirect wealth, then therefore that will be the thing day master. Therefore, that's where certain element here later we go into the special structure. We can see that this is not a very common one. Indirect wealth sitting on direct office. And but then, of course, this will only be capable having this. But if it's the case, then it is very auspicious. So very auspicious. It's very good. Because here sitting on direct officer, because wealth produces officer. Wealth produces officer. And of course, here we can see that Sinhai is also that means here we find that the Sinhai is also revolution. It's also about loud and also about revolution. Therefore, that is why it is a very the pillar is special in the sense that it's very energetic. And therefore, this is only when you have your sin metal sitting on your water, because sin produces the water. And therefore, here this is a part where you have your indirect wealth sitting on direct office. Right, so very intelligent, definitely very intelligent. That would be it. And sin high is that revolution, that kind of thing. Therefore, that's where we find that there is uh, an element that shows that it's a very an element that is able to provide so kind of a revolution in a person's mind. Okay, so that is provided that of course it is a favorable combination that it comes in into one. And the opposite of revolution, of course, is, or if it becomes unfavorable, then it basically means failed attempts. Failed attempts normally results in conflict, results in of course, uh, uh, obstacles and huge losses as well. Huh? In this. Okay, let's move along. Therefore, here this is where uh, we may consider that if it comes with, because revolution of course comes with a lot of risk, and when it fails, as you can see, then there will be issues related to direct officer, which is legal entanglements and so on. So, but net, we do find that it is favorable. So therefore, indirect wealth sitting on direct officer, more often than not, it is favorable. To the point. Right. Right. As we move along, can just read a bit more, but overall, you just interpret that as it is. Secondly, now we find the indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing. Indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing. Therefore, this is where we find that it will be the same element. And 7 killing if it is weak. Because if 7 killing, as mentioned earlier, direct wealth produces 7 killing. Therefore, if the indirect wealth sits on 7 killing, how does that work? How does indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing works? Because this is of the same element, isn't it? So when it's of the same element, then we find that there can be now far more permutations. So there are many more pillars that can be far better permutation. If we look into a Jiawood Day master, what would be the indirect wealth? The indirect wealth, again, as we discussed, would be Wu Earth. The Wu Earth. If it is a Wu Earth, then of course here, what would be the 7 killing? The 7 killing would be Keng metal. If it's Keng metal here, then this would be the monkey, isn't it? Wu Shen. Therefore, this would be a Wu Shen, which is then your Yang Earth, which of course sits on your Yang metal. So Earth sitting on Yang metal. Therefore, there will be indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing. And so indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing is also usually the pillar itself. Is going to be one of those pillar that can be one that is also near to the Fui Kong type also. Yeah, as it is. Okay, so this would be then how we can interpret, and usually it interprets positively in a sense that the person, because first of all you have indirect wealth which is sitting on 7 killing. It would then shows that the person will be a very high tendency to take risk very willing to take risk, very willing to work very hard, because both of them are hardworking half element, working hard half element on that part. But if it is not favorable, if the 7 killing is, then this is where of course it comes the same lah. If you're very willing to take risks, if you're very willing to go all out, and of course high risk high return, if you fail, then there will be financial drain. Therefore here one have to look carefully to see whether when indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing, the person tends to be a risk taker, tends to go all out, tends to be so extrovert, and sometimes the failure is women, or opposite sex to the one. So even if it's for women, 7K is boyfriend, 7K is also love relations. And for the man, then it's indirect wealth, which is the girlfriend star, has this. Therefore, whether male or female, both have that entanglement, that sexual entanglement that can create a kind of a scandal that can then lead to a difficult relationship. So therefore, has a luck pillar not favorable. If it is your natal chart, okay, if it's your natal chart, then it shows that you are a risk taker and you're very willing to be entrepreneur. But if it's a luck pillar means usually when it comes in, then because when it comes in, the 7K attacks you. Normally 7K generally, more often than not, is unfavorable. Therefore, indirect wealth sitting on the 7K would then denote problems with related to money. It's a money related problem that can then comes in together. All right. So anyway, net wise, we do find that indirect wealth sitting on 7K is not really something more often than not that you actually welcome. So in that case, it will be inauspicious, it will be unlucky, and therefore we normally read normally lah. That means if you're looking at it from a general point of view, you are not you don't see too many complex relationship yet. So if at the first level, just say unlucky, just say not very good. Indirect wealth sitting on 7 killing is no good, and it can lead to relationship issue. It can lead to money. In a way, it's money issue, relationship issue combined together. And so if you have rock wealth, even worse. Therefore, it might be divorce, and then there's a very bitter, hostile divorce, and losing money along that. So be careful. This may denote a divorce star that can actually lead to major financial loss. All right. So anyway, but once again, this is if you're reading it broadly. But if it is detailed, then you can actually see further whether it's favorable or unfavorable to get a better reading. Okay, now let's move on to indirect wealth sitting on indirect resource. In a way, sitting on is just like when I mentioned that there is a clash. That there is a clash if you read it away in the chart. But now, as you look into the interplay, it can be very auspicious when you find indirect wealth sitting on direct resource. But then again, not easy, isn't it? What is the Jiawut? What is the Jiawut for? What is the direct resource for a Jiawut? Great water. Then what would this sign be? It would, therefore, if it is a rat, very good, Jenny. Thank you. Therefore, if it is an earth rat, if it's an earth rat, therefore we can find that one is all right. You can find what is next year's zodiac sign? What is the next year? Next year is dragon, isn't it? And dragon, and of course, yeah. Therefore, there's a yang wood. What is it? A yang wood sitting on earth. Yang wood sitting on earth. So if it's a yang wood sitting on earth, if it is a jia wood sitting on earth, therefore you have wood, you have earth. So what does earth produce? What does earth produce? Earth produces metal, and metal will chop wood. So metal, for metal, your wealth is wood, isn't it? Therefore, this will be the case where we can find for next year metal people. So for metal people, next year will be indirect wealth. Wealth is wealth sitting on resource, sitting on resource. Therefore, when at the end of this year, when we begin to read charts for people, so the next year's element is a wealth sitting on resource for the metal people, for metal people. So therefore, you read whether it will be, but of course, this will be for the Keng metal because indirect wealth, this is Jia wood, so therefore it will be the Keng metal. So Keng metal people will then see, but then they will see sitting on indirect resource rather than direct. But anyway, let's just consider how we can read the chart there. Okay, so anyway, auspicious. So anyway, you find indirect wealth sitting on the direct resource that would be harmonious because that is opposite gender. Because it's opposite gender. That means there is a husband and wife lah. Because indirect wealth is if it's yin or yang, the other side is opposite. Therefore, this is something that they want to combine. So it's not really a clash, but a harmonious part. If it's ren and ting fire, that kind of thing as well. Therefore, this is where sitting on it would be auspicious. Also auspicious for women. So if it's for women, that will be also very auspicious. Very good. Because that represents the kind of, if the direct officer appears. Because if direct officer appears means there's harmony. Indirect wealth will produce the direct officer will produce the resource. Therefore, there's a flow already, harmonious flow. And then the direct officer is the husband. Therefore, the husband will be produced and the husband can produce. So the husband will appear and one that is good for the woman. So that is why they will say, that's why the reading says, good luck, great blessing, happiness, consummation. Therefore, there's indirect wealth sitting on direct resource. Quite rare for it. When it comes to sitting on indirect resource. Now this is the part where it becomes inauspicious. So sitting on direct resource is area, but so next year is different. So next year for Keng metal people, that will be indirect wealth sitting on Wu Earth, which will then be indirect resource. Therefore, for Keng metal people, next year is indirect wealth sitting on indirect resource. So when the person asks you, when the Keng metal day master people ask you, hey, next year how? My year 2024 how? Therefore, this is where we can then read. Well, with indirect wealth, there will be potential for small gains. But then, of course, because of the indirect resource, there is a chance for you to lose money. Therefore, there's a tendency for you to be speculative. And indirect resource can also mean uncle. So therefore, if any uncle of yours comes to you with a business idea or any help, please try to avoid. Therefore, that would be just what it actually means. Yeah, as it is. But if yourself is strong, not to worry. If a day master is strong and is rooted, you can take. You are more hardy. You can more hardy. You can use the indirect wealth. Therefore, don't just generalize to say that it is inauspicious straight up, but it can be fine. It can be fine to actually combine them together. Therefore, that would be it. But of course, if the self is weak, then we consider that to be unfavorable. So the idea, of course, is about money and health. So money and health and resource can also mean documents, can also mean information. Therefore, this may be the case where it may be something like you lose your document, you lost some information, like cybersecurity, your data got hacked, and there's a loss of income. Therefore, that might be also the case looking into indirect wealth sitting on indirect source. Okay, so now indirect wealth sitting on direct wealth. Now, indirect wealth sitting on direct wealth once again will be, it has to be the water and it has to be the fire. It has to be the fire, it has to be the snake or the horse, it has to be the rat and the pig. Therefore, the snake, horse, rat, and pig will be one where you can then have the chance of an indirect wealth sitting on direct wealth. And usually those are the powerful elements. Therefore it's either very auspicious or the other way around. Therefore, indirect wealth sitting on direct wealth is very good. Why? Why? Why is indirect wealth sitting on direct wealth very good? Which one is big picture? Which one is entrepreneur, big picture, talk, strategy? Which one is it? Indirect or direct? Therefore, the one that talk big is the one that talk big picture, strategic. That is indirect. Sorry, I can't seem to control my pen. Sorry. I just kind of lost. Okay, indirect. My pen runs out of ink really, I think. Okay, so anyway, sorry. So anyway, this would mean if it is indirect, and then this is sitting on direct. Because why? Because the stems are broad and big picture. Therefore, on the outside, you talk strategy with people, with your fellow investors, your partners. You talk big picture. You talk strategy. But when it comes back to when a meeting is over, when a presentation is done, you come to work. You are detail oriented. You are meticulous. You are able to focus on the nitty gritty stuff because usually the world is either people who can talk cannot do one or people who can do but cannot talk. Therefore, this one you can talk, you can do on the right place, on the right place. Talk when you should talk, do when you should do. Therefore, the stem is what you when you talk to people. Direct wealth is when you do on the ground, when it's as it is. That's why indirect wealth, sitting on direct wealth, is highly auspicious because these people are both entrepreneur and accountant. They are both, they both, they can appeal to the both sides. Therefore, that's where they can leverage on the two sides. They are excellent financial prospects. They are sharp. They have business sense. Therefore, these people, they don't just BS only, They don't just talk about business strategy, but they actually can roll up their sleeves and prepare the financial reports, So they know their double entries. They know their. So that's where we can find that they can then engage in trade and industry. They'll be very good. They can go either way because if you are direct wealth, you can be that employee. Direct wealth are hardworking employee, and of course, the indirect wealth represents employer, or represents entrepreneur, business people. And therefore, either way, a good employee, fine. Employer also can, no problem. So therefore, that is why they are very flexible. They can then they can be both at the same time. Excellent. So that's why indirect wealth, sitting on direct wealth, is very, very good. Yeah, as this. Okay, so now let's take a look into indirect wealth sitting on indirect. Also, okay, indirect wealth sitting on indirect wealth means a pure chart, a pure chart. A pure chart normally very big, really. Therefore, that's where we can find if it is a sinew. If it is a sinew, therefore it's a kengsheng. Therefore, these are all very pure chart, a pure metal chart. As it is. Therefore, this is the part where we can then see if it is very pure. Okay, so if it's pure, it's also auspicious. It's also, and it's because it's pure chart. If it's a pure pillar, it will be a strong and robust pillar. It will be very auspicious. Therefore, relationship with opposite gender show also excellent as it is. Therefore, can make money as it is. Therefore, quick thinking, fast action, that will be it. Maybe here not so detailed, not so focused on the accounting part. Therefore, as a result, it can lead to resources. Why? Because you are so pure in outgoing entrepreneur, talk big, talk strategy, but didn't really pay attention to the final details in accounting, can be easily betrayed, can be cheated. Yeah, therefore can lead to financial losses. Right, move along. We can have your indirect wealth uh sitting on hurting officer. Good, because when you have indirect wealth, you want output. You want sitting on output. Therefore, here you have your output producing to your partner. So therefore, that's where we can find that if it's a hurting officer, that would be also good, isn't it? Therefore, that would be the thing. Outside. Therefore, that would be also equally what we should be looking for, as it is. All right. Now my pen is back, as it is. Okay, so let me just, so if it's hurting officer, fine. Huh? But once again, hurting officer produces harmoniously to the indirect wealth, so there's always a yin and yang. So here we come into the fire and the water once again. Huh? Fire or water people. So that is why if you have if you have ren water, then your indirect wealth will be your pink fire. Then your hurting officer will then be your yin. So once again, what do I mean? Once again, it would be the the hurting officer will either be a water based or a fire based. Fire based. So if a hurting officer is going to be your ting fire, if it's going to be ting fire, then therefore this will be your jia. This will be your jia. Because jia will then be your output, will then be your ting fire. It will be your harmonious production. And then here, of course, for you to have an indirect wealth, therefore that will be your earth, and therefore that will be your wu earth. And therefore, for you to have a ting fire, then that what it will be? That will be your horse, isn't it? That will be your horse. So horse is a volcano. Horse, this will be a wu, which is a volcano sign. Therefore, that will be also generally one that can add vigor. Why should it be vigor? Why should it be vigor? It should be vigor because the moment you have an indirect wealth sitting on a hurting officer, your pillar is either that volcano type or the other type, of course, will be also equally quite reflective of a very strong constitution that one can see as well. All right, there we go. So therefore, this will be generally favorable. But then once again, if there's indirect loss, indirect wealth, there is always a tendency when it becomes unfavorable, it will then result in so-called financial losses or the same as well. Okay, indirect wealth sitting on eating God. Therefore, now we find that there are more of it, moderate. We do find that that there are many signs, but usually they can be generally over because why? Again, sitting on output. So indirect wealth sitting on output is favorable and direct office, and of course, with direct officer eating God, it represents a more stable job, a more of so-called favorable part, but it can also mean corruption into a certain part as well. Okay, indirect wealth sitting on rock wealth. There's a clash already. There's a clash already. Therefore, here we find that the indirect wealth sitting on rock wealth would then be very bad. The idea, of course, is that rock wealth robs you. Therefore, when the rock wealth arrive, it rob your wealth. It rob your wealth. And in the case of relationship, it can also means somebody comes and take your spouse away. Somebody takes into a triangle love affair. So you can also have that triangle love affair, extramarital relationships, that kind of interplay that comes in. So net, we don't find that this could be something favorable, yeah, as it is. All right. Where's my other job? Okay, so as you look into the indirect wealth, so as you look into the indirect wealth, then of course here, what do we then? Now let me take a look into one particular chart. Let me take a look into a particular chart on this part. Let's just do a bit of a case first before we move on to the next part. Hopefully we do have time. Let's take a look into the sixth prime minister of this country. We find Najib Tun Razak. Do you find indirect wealth? I'm sure you would find indirect wealth because today's topic is indirect wealth. So indirect wealth sitting on what? Indirect wealth sitting on indirect wealth. Huh? Therefore, indirect wealth sitting on indirect wealth, and indirect wealth is a talent. And again, if you are embraced by wealth, you will be one of the richest around. Therefore, this chart is very auspicious for having money. Having money. Having money. And the day master is rooted. The day master is wood born in end of summer, maybe a week. Therefore, it may be a weak day master, but it is rooted. Therefore, it has its strength. But it has the indirect resource. Remember, as I mentioned, there's an indirect resource. And so indirect resource comes to clash with your indirect wealth. And therefore, that's where we will consider that there is a wealth that deteriorates the health. And therefore, this person would likely not be healthy. Not be healthy because money favors over the wealth. So we can expect the person to be vulnerable to sickness. Now, in terms of relationship, remember to talk about relationship. Will this person have what is the first marriage? What will be the first marriage? The first marriage will be the the direct wealth. Can you find the direct wealth? This will be the wife, isn't it? Huh? So the direct wealth will be the wife. The wife is hidden under what star? The wife is hidden under the star, which is the snake. And then, of course, we do find that the girlfriend or the second wife will then be a greater proximity and stronger and protruded to the top. And moreover, here there is a clash. The snake does have a clash with it as well. Therefore, we can find that. Remember that we discussed this. This was last week's sharing. Is talk about relationship wise. That person may tend to marry early, tend to have a marital issue, and then the person would be married again. The second one, and the second one would then be the stronger spouse that comes along the line. Okay, so anyway, this would be indirect wealth sitting on indirect wealth, which can be a very auspicious sign that shows a person would have great opportunity to make a lot of money as it is. All right, let's come in. So indirect wealth sitting on friend. No good. Indirect wealth sitting on friend. This would be no good. We do find that again, sitting on rock wealth, sitting on friend star, do represents a clash. Therefore, this would then be indicate that there will be a problem with partnership, a problem with in a relationship once again. So once again, we find that indirect wealth do not find favor with the friends. All right. So with this in mind, these are the how they sit on. So let us summarize once again. So if you have indirect wealth, what would be your indirect wealth? So remember, the moment you have indirect wealth, what do we want to see? So first of all, when you see indirect wealth, for this person, indirect wealth is a structure. Indirect wealth is protruded to the stems, embraced to the day master. That will be an expected person who makes a lot of money, very rich. Then remember, we want to see output. Is there output or not? Is there output in this chart? Do we find output?
Yes.
Yes.
Tingo.
Sorry? Hunting officer, correct. So we find output.
And
So
Tingo
good.
also with the Ting Fire.
With the thing fire here, isn't it? Okay, very good. All right. So which is closer? Which is closer? Eating God is closer. Eating God is in a month, therefore eating God is closer. Right. Both, both they are strong as it is closer. Therefore, when you see indirect wealth, you want to see output. You want to see output. So if there's output, the output will fit. So the fire. So because this person is born in summer, and so summer fire is strong, so the fire feeds into the indirect, produces the wealth, and then the wealth is protruded. Therefore, it will be very auspicious. The person, this person, and furthermore, this is a survival. Yiwood is survival. So is it rooted or not? Must be rooted. What is it rooted? Rooted, but very weak, very weak rooting. So therefore, and then this is ocean. So the analogy will be something like, the analogy will be something like this is like a plant, this like a lily plant, which is rooted, and then on the ocean, because hive, pig is the ocean. Therefore, this is a floating lily. No, not floating, but rooted. Rooted lily. Rooted, got ground or not? Rooted on a lot of ground. Ground is the earth. Therefore, fits the earth into the area. Therefore, this person is a rooted lily. A rooted lily in the ocean, and deeply rooted with very strong producing earth. And then got sun some. Then got sun, because this is what the wood, wood people are very needy one. Wood people need the sunlight, wood people need the earth, and wood people needs to be rooted, and then therefore this day master has everything. What should this day master be worried about? What is the most dangerous point? How do we terminate this? This person will then need a pair of scissors. There's a pair of scissors that come in. Therefore, that would be the area. So this person need worry what the person worried the most is uh metal. Therefore, this will be the sum here, because here when you cut off the root, and then this person floats away. As it is. All right. So anyway, that will be just looking into how we can analyze the chart. We look into marital relationships. We look into the elements that supports the indirect wealth that we have. Okay, so that's it for the second part. So I'll see you next week for the concluding part of indirect wealth. As we then see how the indirect wealth fare when we meet all the other gods in the arriving periods. Okay, so good night. See you.